my faded jeans.
They took away my faded jeans.
And gave me all this army green.
Gave me all this army green.
They took away my faded jeans.
They took away my faded jeans.
And gave me all this army green.
Gave me all this army greens.
Whoa, whoa,
whoa.
Young men and women join the Army knowing it will change their lives, but they can't know how it will affect them. Mike Travis has written a memoir of his Army years called Faded Jeans to Army Greens, a story of Army life from basic to Desert Storm. He's with us in our studio. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Chris, and good morning, Beth Ann. Thank you so much for having me on the program.
Sure. You were in during Desert Storm. Well, you had done a 2-year hitch and then were called back for Desert Storm. Is that right?
Correct. I had spent 2 years basically in the States. Fort Ord was my main permanent unit as a petroleum supply specialist, fuel truck driver. And then I got out, and then I got called back as part of Operation Desert Storm. They called back many soldiers as part of inactive ready reserve units.
What did that feel like?
Well, thank you for sharing that cadence. There's actually another military cadence that says, got a letter in the mail, go to war, go to jail. And that's sort of exactly what happened to all of us. We got a letter in the mail. So I sort of, when I got out, I kind of had a feeling already things were building up in Kuwait and things like that. So I sort of wasn't sure if I was going to be called back or not. But so it wasn't a huge surprise when I got the letter in the mail in January of that year, 1991. But, you know, it was still kind of defeating because I was back in college and starting the civilian life.
Well, it was a very uncertain time. I mean, it was a huge deployment, 500,000 troops.
Yes,
certainly the largest since the Vietnam War, and probably the largest at a time since the Second World War in terms of 500,000 suddenly deployed like that.
Right, and what's funny is that when I went to this crew recruitment station when I first joined, you sign up for 8 years and it's active duty time and inactive time. And the recruiter was kind of joking, oh, don't worry, inactive time, they never call people back. They haven't done that since Vietnam, so no worries. And then ironically, we all got called back.
Pretty much been doing that ever since.
Yeah, it seems that way, yes.
Well, what kind of anxieties did you have going in? I mean, given what we knew and didn't know at the time.
Going into the military?
Yeah, we're going overseas.
To Desert Storm. Well, I knew that we needed to, help out Kuwait. I mean, there were a lot of people that was saying it was just about war, but Saddam Hussein did take over an entire country and was holding it hostage. So, and the nice thing was that at the time President Bush had a coalition of many countries around the world. So it was something we needed to do. There was a lot of fears, though, from all of us, mainly because we didn't know what kind of nerve gas, or they were talking about all these chemical weapons that he had that he could use against us. And also the Republican elite guard was scary. So going over there, I really actually didn't think I was coming back when I left. So I said goodbye to people and, made amends with, people that were, enemies in the past and things because I didn't think I was coming back.
That's a lot for a young man, 23 years old at the time, to take in.
Yes. And so many of us were facing that. I got called back and we had to go back to Fort Lee, Virginia, where I had my original training. And so we all waited in these massive lines while we got reissued all of our equipment. And, I at the time I got to meet James Tatum, and that was one of the catalysts for me writing this book. Was I met him, and he had also been called back, and we became really good friends in those few weeks when we were doing the training, and then we went over together to Saudi Arabia.
And these are really close friendships.
Yes. You spend so much time together, and as we were talking earlier, Chris, at that time in the early the late 80s and early 90s, there was no cell phones, there wasn't iPads. So, I mean, there wasn't much to do except write letters, which I've shared a lot of letters in my book that I wrote to my parents and family members. But, you spent a lot of time talking and playing cards and things like that. So you really got to know people, at a deeper level.
Interacting with each other the way people did before the iPhones
true.
took over, right?
Yes.
Well, at the same time, you it sounds as if you always were a writer in terms of someone who got a lot of benefit from putting his thoughts down on paper.
Well, I did write a lot of letters, and that was nice. When I went to write the book, I asked my mom, and of course she had kept a lot of the letters, so that was great because I could use that to help write it. And I'd also written, when I was in Kuwait, I wrote a lot of journals at that time, but I don't know if I ever considered myself a writer, but going through education and getting a PhD, I spent a lot of time writing, and so I guess I've developed that skill over time.
Well, at the same time, the kind of writing you do when you don't think you're a writer can be very honest stuff.
True,
right?
True. So, I really wanted to write the book to honor my fellow soldier James Tatum, the person I was talking about earlier, because he did not make it back. So he was. We were in barracks in Saudi Arabia, and they were calling people out into formations. And then they were giving you orders to go up to various units and join those units because we weren't assigned to a unit yet as the inactive ready reserve. And I got the call to go to an armory division up at the front lines. And at the time, we both thought, he was giving me a hug saying goodbye, thinking I was the one that was probably not coming back. And it turns out that just a couple days later, those barracks were hit by a Scud missile. And it was actually the biggest loss of American troops in the Operation Desert Storm. Over 20 soldiers were lost when the Scud missile hit the barracks. So I wanted to honor him by, talking about him in this book and sharing his story.
It has to have been a kind of a haunting, it could have been you sensation.
Right, yeah. And I did feel that because I didn't find out until I actually got back to the States that he had passed away. I had seen I think it was a Time magazine article that showed all the faces of the people that were lost in that. I mean, when we were over there, we kind of heard, but they didn't want to tell us a lot of the bad things. When you're a soldier, you don't tell them, oh, well, barracks just got hit. You tell them we're doing well, the war's going well and everything. You don't hear the full story.
Yeah.
So when I got back, it kind of it made me think now I'm sort of living. I have to live for two lives now, and so I actually. I tried contacting the family when I got back, but I think they were overwhelmed with media coverage. But I did, before I finished the book over the summer, I actually was able to get a hold of the parents, Neil and Carol Tatum, and I had a great conversation with the dad. And I even kind of broke down when I was talking to him, just because it's still so emotional to think about. I don't think about it every day, but to think about just the luck of the draw that kept me here and him no longer.
Well, it's a powerful memoir, Mike, and thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for letting me share it.
Mike Travis is the author of Faded Jeans to Army Greens, a story of Army life from basic to Desert Storm. You can find out more about him and his book on our Hawaii Conversation Facebook page.